Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. They pushed Earth too hard, now the universe knows human wrath. They called us the youngest children of the stars. For 2 centuries, humanity had existed under the watchful eyes of the celestial Concordat, an alliance of 7 ancient spacefaring civilizations who claimed to have nurtured thousands of species into the galactic community. We were their latest project, their newest experiment in guided evolution. We didn't know we were being strangled. Ilara Reeve stood at the observation deck of Colony Station Nova Haven, staring out at the stars that peppered the darkness beyond the hardened glass. Her reflection stared back, dark hair tied back in a practical knot, deep brown eyes focused on the horizon, the blue patch of the Colonial Science Division prominent on her shoulder. At 34, she'd spent more than half her life on the frontier, pushing the boundaries that the Concordat kept trying to set. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice belonged to Administrator Tane, who had stepped silently beside her. Hard to believe there was nothing here but asteroids and cosmic dust 10 years ago. Ilara nodded. Nova Haven was humanity's most distant settlement, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. Nearly 300,000 colonists, scientists, and engineers working together to build something extraordinary at the edge of what the Concordat calls permitted space. The atmospheric processors are finally stabilizing on the surface, she said. Another year and we can begin large-scale terraforming. 5 years after that, people won't need environmental suits to walk outside. Chen smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. If the Concordat allows it, the Realian ambassador made another noise, no doubt about environmental compliance reviews. Ilara felt her jaw tighten. The Realians, smooth-skinned humanoids with 6 fingers and eyes that seemed to shimmer like opals, were the Concordat species most directly involved in guiding human development. They were unfailingly polite, endlessly patronizing, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. "We're well within the parameters of the treaty," she replied. "They can review all they want. You know, it's not about the parameters." Chen leaned closer, voice dropping. "It's about control. Every time we succeed at something they didn't expect, they move the goalposts." Before she could respond, the station's alert system pulsed, not the urgent wail of an emergency, but the soft chime indicating an unscheduled arrival. "Strange," Chen muttered, turning to the nearest console. "We're not expecting any ships for another week." The display flickered as data streamed across its surface. His expression hardened. 5 vessels just crossed the outer sensor perimeter. Concordat Registry, Diplomatic Mission. Ilara swallowed. Diplomatic codes. Chen's fingers flew across the interface. "They're not responding to hails." The viewports automatically enhanced as the ships came into visual range. Ilara recognized the sleek, almost organic lines of their hulls, 3 escorts flanking 2 larger craft that she didn't recognize. "What are those?" she asked, pointing. Before Chen could answer, the station's emergency system erupted into a wall of sound. Red warning lights bathed the deck as the main console blared urgent alerts. "Energy readings. They're activating weapon systems," Chen shouted over the cacophony. "That's impossible." Ilara's voice hollow with disbelief, she whispered, "The treaty," but her words died as the first beam of concentrated energy lanced out from the lead ship, striking Nova Haven's outer defensive shield. The barrier flared brilliant blue before collapsing under the assault. "All personnel, this is not a drill," the station's AI announced with artificial calm. "Hostile action detected. Evacuation protocols initiated." Chen was already at the comm array. "This is Administrator Chen to all Concordat vessels, we are an unarmed research colony. Cease fire immediately." The only response was another energy beam that cut through the station's ring. The observation deck trembled as emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the structure. "We need to get to the escape pods," Ilara said, grabbing Chen's arm. "Why are they doing this?" he panted, face ashen. "We haven't violated any terms. They never made it. As they reached the main corridor, a massive explosion tore through the station's central hub. The last thing Elara saw was a wall of fire racing toward them before darkness claimed her. She shouldn't have survived. By all calculations, all logic, all reasonable physics, Elara Reeves should have been atomized along with Nova Haven's 300,000 inhabitants. Yet somehow, impossibly, she awoke floating among the debris, her body encased in an emergency survival suit. She had no memory of donning it. The rescue came 3 days later, a passing merchant vessel that detected her faint distress signal. By then, she had drifted through what remained of Nova Haven, twisted metal, frozen bodies, and the scattered remnants of humanity's hope. The official Concordat statement came not long after. While she was still in medical recovery on Earth, Nova Haven had suffered a catastrophic reactor failure, a regrettable accident, they said. A tragic loss. The Concordat expressed its deepest sympathies and offered technological assistance to prevent such occurrences in the future. Not a word about the Realian warships. Not a mention of the unprovoked attack. Just condolences, and an offer for more guidance. Humanity's leaders, those who spoke for billions from their comfortable offices on Earth, nodded and accepted the lies. They thanked the Concordat for its concern. They established commissions to study reactor safety. Elara watched it all from her hospital bed, the only survivor, the only witness, and understood with crystal clarity that the powers governing humanity were either complicit or cowardly. Either way, Nova Haven would never receive justice through official channels. She checked herself out against medical advice 5 days later. The doctors protested, her injuries hadn't fully healed, her psychological evaluation wasn't complete, but they couldn't legally stop her. What they didn't know was that something fundamental had changed in Elara Reeves. The woman who had gazed peacefully at the stars was gone. In her place stood someone forged in the fires of Nova Haven's destruction, someone with a singular purpose that burned like white-hot steel in her veins. Within weeks, she had made contact with others who harbored quiet suspicions about the Concordat. Across Earth and its remaining colonies, they had witnessed too many accidents, too many setbacks, too many promising human ventures mysteriously failing. Marcus Webb, a former military intelligence officer who had been investigating unusual activity at the Concordat embassy on Earth, Zara Okoro, a brilliant programmer whose security systems had captured strange data transmissions just before 3 human research vessels disappeared near Jupiter, Quan Lin, whose revolutionary energy technology had been deemed too unstable for human use by Concordat advisors, only to appear 2 years later on Aurelian colony world. Together, they formed what they called the Ghost Protocol, a network of humans dedicated to one purpose: breaking free from the Concordat's control by any means necessary. They expect us to be grateful, Elara told them during their first clandestine meeting in an abandoned mining facility on Luna. They expect us to be obedient. They expect us to be predictable. She leaned forward, eyes reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. We will be none of these things. For 2 years, they worked in absolute secrecy, gathering intelligence, building resources, recruiting others who had begun to see through the Concordat's benevolent facade. They avoided detection by using methods the Concordat considered too primitive to monitor: paper notes, analog devices, technologies so old they were deemed obsolete. During those 2 years, Elara learned things that turned her cold rage into something more focused, more dangerous. The Concordat had never guided a species to full galactic citizenship. The success stories they paraded before humanity were actually subjugated races, carefully controlled, their development stunted in key areas to ensure they never became true competitors. And humanity? Humans were considered particularly dangerous, a species with too much adaptability, too much aggression, too much potential. The Concordat had been systematically sabotaging human advancement for decades, all while smiling and offering helpful advice. Nova Haven hadn't been destroyed because it violated any treaty. It had been destroyed because it was succeeding too well, developing technologies that might eventually challenge Concordat superiority. When the Ghost Protocol finally struck back, they did so with precision that left no doubt about their intent. They targeted a research installation on Mars, not with bombs or bullets, but with information. Using access codes obtained through means they never discussed, they downloaded every file, every communication, every secret the facility contained. Then they broadcast it all, not just to human networks, but to every species in the Concordat, records of deliberate technological sabotage, plans for population control, strategies for keeping humanity dependent on Concordat guidance, and, most damning of all, footage from Nova Haven showing the unprovoked attack, recovered from AR's survival suit data recorder. The Raelian response was immediate and revealing, not denial, not explanation, but rage. How dare these primitives, one ambassador fumed. How dare these children? Within hours, Concordat representatives demanded that Earth's governments find and surrender the perpetrators for proper judgment. But something unexpected happened. Faced with irrefutable evidence of the Concordat's treachery, humanity didn't cower. From the highest levels of government to ordinary citizens, a wave of cold fury swept across Earth and its colonies. For the first time since contact, a human representative addressed the Concordat without deference or gratitude. Before the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chen, Administrator Chen's sister, delivered a message that sent shock waves through the assembled alien dignitaries. For 2 centuries, we accepted your guidance in good faith, she said, voice steady despite the 7 imposing leaders who towered over her. Today we know the truth, you fear us. You have always feared us. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. This is our formal notice, the treaties are void. The agreements are nullified. Humanity withdraws from the celestial Concordat effective immediately. The chamber erupted in protest, threats and warnings shouted in a dozen alien languages. Ambassador Chen waited until the noise subsided before delivering her final words, broadcast live across Concordat space. You have 1 standard cycle to remove all personnel and technology from human space. After that, any Concordat presence will be considered hostile. As the broadcast ended, Marcus Webb turned to Alara, expression grave. They won't leave peacefully. They can't afford to let us go. Alara nodded, watching the chaos unfolding on the screen. I know this isn't the end. It's barely the beginning. Zara looked up from her array of screens, dark eyes traveling. We've discovered something else in the files, something called Project Stardust. It's heavily encrypted, but what we've decoded so far, it's not just about controlling us. It's about something they found in our genetic structure. Something they're afraid of. Alara stared at the partial data on Zara's screen, pieces of a puzzle that didn't yet form a complete picture. One thing was clear, the Concordat's interest in humanity had never been about guidance or benevolence. It was about fear and containment. So we need to find out exactly what they're afraid of, she said quietly. And we need to. 6 months later. The Concordat launched what they expected would be a swift punitive action, a show of force to remind the upstart species of its place in the cosmic hierarchy. A fleet of 30 warships representing all 7 species converged on the human colony of Titan. What they found instead was emptiness. The colony, home to over 50,000 humans, had been completely evacuated. Not a single life sign remained. As the Concordat fleet held position, puzzling over the development, silent ships emerged from Titan's heavy methane atmosphere, vessels unlike any the Concordat had encountered before. They didn't match known human designs, weren't detectable by standard sensors, and moved with a precision that seemed impossible for a primitive species. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, 17 Concordat warships had been destroyed or disabled. The rest fled, carrying with them tales of weapons that defied physics and energy signatures beyond anything the Concordat possessed. In the Concordat central chamber on the ancient homeworld of the Rillians, High Executive Val Nasir faced the assembled representatives with an expression denoting both rage and fear. How is this possible? She demanded. Their technology was contained. Their development was monitored. They should not have these capabilities. Elder Mosen of the Brakari, a species resembling massive crystalline insects, clicked his mandibles in agitation. We have discovered disturbing evidence, High Executive. The humans have been deceiving us, presenting primitive technology for our inspection while developing other paths in secret, Project Stardust. Velnasir's voice dropped to a hiss. They've discovered it. The chamber fell silent. Project Stardust was the Concordat's most closely guarded secret, the real reason humans had been placed under such strict observation from the moment they were discovered. Impossible, said Tereshko, the Serpentine representative of the Negan Collective. Even most of our own people don't know the truth. And yet Velnasir replied, they are using weapons that harness exactly the energy signature we feared they might discover. The decision was clear. We cannot allow this to continue. Prepare the purifiers. Even among the hardened Concordat leadership, this pronouncement caused visible distress. The purifiers were planet-killing weapons used only 3 times in the Concordat's long history. Their deployment required unanimous consent from all 7 species. Elder Mustin raised a crystalline limb in objection. High Executive, she began. But Velnasir cut her off. We have no choice. Reports indicate that Ghost Protocol vessels have been detected as far as the Centauri system. If they reach their full potential, none of US will remain. Back on Luna. Ilara received the intelligence with grim satisfaction. They've taken the bait, she told the assembled leaders of Ghost Protocol. The purifiers have been authorized. Zara Okoro, now the network's chief of intelligence, displayed a holographic model of the massive Concordat weapons platforms. These are planet killers, designed to render a world uninhabitable in minutes. They're bringing 3, 1 for Earth, 1 for Mars, 1 for the lunar colonies. Marcus Webb, hardened from recent missions but still commanding the Resistance's military arm, studied the projection with a tactician's eye. Impressive, but predictable. The Concordat always reaches for overwhelming force. Quan Lin, whose primitive energy technology had been the backbone of Ghost Protocol's unexpected advantage, smiled thinly. They still don't understand. They think we stole their technology and reverse-engineered it. Which is exactly what we wanted them to think. Ilara nodded. It kept them looking in the wrong direction. The truth, which the Concordat had yet to grasp, was both simpler and more profound. The weapons of Ghost Protocol weren't based on Concordat technology at all. They were entirely human innovations developed in secret while presenting a facade of compliance. What about Project Stardust? Asked Dr. Maya Thorne, the newest member of their leadership, a xenobiologist who had once worked directly with Concordat researchers. She had defected after discovering discrepancies in their data. Ilara nodded to Zara, who brought up a new display, complex genetic sequences. We've decrypted most of the Stardust files, Zara explained. It's not what we expected. The display zoomed in on a particular genetic marker, one unique to human DNA. The Concordat discovered this shortly after first contact, Zara continued. They call it an adaptive resonance sequence. In simple terms, it allows human consciousness to interact with quantum fields in ways other species can't. Dr. Thorne leaned forward, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the gravity of their situation. That's why they've been so insistent on controlling our technological development. They're not afraid of our aggression or our adaptability, they're afraid of what happens when we fully understand quantum physics, she finished. Because once we do, we can manipulate reality in ways they can't. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just another species to be guided and controlled. They were fundamentally different, possessing potential the Concordat had recognized and feared from the beginning. So what's our next move? Marcus finally asked. Ilara's expression hardened. We've confirmed the purifiers are being moved into position. We have 72 hours before they're in range of Earth. It's time for the final phase. The plan had been in development for months, ever since they first discovered fragments of Project Stardust in the stolen Realian files. It was audacious, perhaps impossible, but if it worked, Ilara would lead the infiltration team personally. Marcus objected, that's suicide. The Nexus is at the heart of Realian space, protected by their entire fleet. Elara's smile was cold. Which is why they'll never expect us to target it. They think we're preparing to defend Earth. They've committed most of their forces to the Purifier mission. She activated a personal holographic projector, displaying a small, unassuming device. This is what Quan and his team have been working on, the quantum bridge. Once placed within the Nexus, it will allow us to do something the Concordat believes is theoretically impossible. Dr. Thorne raised an eyebrow. What's that? It will let us speak directly to every sentient being in Concordat space simultaneously, not through technology, through the quantum field itself. The room erupted in questions and objections, but Elara raised a hand for silence. I know it sounds impossible. The Concordat themselves theorized it could be done, but they lack the genetic structure to attempt it. We don't. This is what they've feared since they first studied our DNA. She looked around at each of them, humans who had sacrificed everything to free their species from subjugation. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about showing the galaxy what humanity truly is. The infiltration of the Nexus would later be studied by military strategists for generations, how a small team of humans bypassed the most sophisticated security in known space, moved undetected through the heart of the Realian homeworld, and reached the most protected installation in the Concordat without firing a single shot. But for Elara, leading her team through the shadowed corridors of the Nexus, such considerations were secondary. Their mission wasn't about combat prowess or tactical brilliance, it was about reaching the central processing core where all Concordat knowledge was stored and managed. They encountered surprisingly little resistance. Most of the Concordat's military resources were focused on the Purifier mission, confident in the automated defenses protecting their central hub. Those defenses designed to detect known weapons and technologies were blind to the methods Ghost Protocol had developed. When they finally reached the core, a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with light and energy, they found only a skeleton crew of technicians who surrendered without a fight, too shocked by the humans' presence to mount any resistance. Set up the bridge, Elara ordered as her team secured the chamber. We have less than 30 minutes before the purifiers are in range of Earth. As Quan and his specialists installed the quantum bridge, connecting it to the Nexus central processors, Elara accessed the Concordat's secure files. What she found confirmed everything they had suspected, and worse. Project Stardust wasn't just about containing human potential, it was about harvesting it. The Concordat had been conducting secret experiments on abducted humans for decades, trying to isolate and replicate the genetic sequence that allowed quantum interaction. They had failed, but they hadn't given up. Their latest plan involved controlled breeding programs and genetic manipulation on a massive scale. Humanity wasn't meant to be exterminated, they were meant to be farms. We're ready, Quan announced, interrupting her grim reading. Elara took a deep breath and approached the device. It was surprisingly small, a crystalline sphere no larger than her fist, pulsing with soft blue light. When she touched it, she felt an immediate resonance, as if something deep within her DNA recognized and responded to its energy. Begin the transmission, she said, the bridge. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. As the quantum bridge activated, Elara felt her consciousness expand, stretching beyond the confines of her physical form. She was still present in the chamber, aware of her team and their surroundings, but simultaneously she was elsewhere, everywhere. Through the quantum field, she sensed billions of minds, Rillians, Brakari, Negan, and the other Concordat species. Not their thoughts precisely, but their presence, their awareness. And they could sense her people. Elara began her words, traveling not through air or communication systems but directly through the quantum fabric that connected all sentient life. I am Elara Reeves of Earth. I speak to you not as an enemy, but as a fellow traveler in this vast universe. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings experience the same impossible phenomenon, a human voice speaking directly to their consciousness, bypassing all technology, all barriers. Your leaders have lied to you for centuries. The celestial concordat has claimed to nurture and guide developing species toward galactic citizenship. This is false. No species has ever graduated from concordat guidance. All remain controlled, limited, prevented from reaching their true potential. Through the bridge, she shared the evidence they had gathered, the files, the experiments, the systematic suppression of dozens of species. She showed them Nova Haven's destruction, the plans for Earth's purification, the truth about Project Stardust. This is not the act of a benevolent guardian, she continued. This is the act of a tyrant that fears what it cannot control. In the Concordat Central Chamber, High Executive Valnasir experienced the transmission with mounting horror. She had rushed back from the Purifier's fleet when the alarm was raised, but it was already too late. The humans had done the impossible, they had weaponized the very quality the Concordat had sought to contain. Shut it down. Valnasir screamed at her technicians. Block the transmission. But there was nothing to shut down, no transmission to block. What the humans had created bypassed all conventional technology. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a fundamental manipulation of reality itself. Through the bridge, Elara sensed panic among the Concordat leadership, and, more importantly, a dawning comprehension among the billions of ordinary citizens who had never known the truth about their government's actions. We do not seek war, she told them. We do not seek domination. What we seek is the freedom to determine our own path, the same freedom that should be the right of every sentient species. She paused, feeling the weight of history in this moment. To the leadership of the Concordat, I offer this choice: recall the Purifiers. End Project Stardust. Acknowledge the sovereignty of Earth and all other subjugated worlds. Do these things, and humanity will extend its hand in peaceful cooperation. Refuse, and we will have no choice but to demonstrate exactly why you have feared us for so long. It wasn't a bluff. Through the bridge, Elara and her team had gained access to every system, every weapon, every secret the Concordat possessed. They could shut down the Purifiers remotely. They could expose the personal crimes of every Concordat leader to their own people. They could, if necessary, bring the entire carefully constructed hierarchy crashing down. A new dawn. In the silent chamber of the Nexus, surrounded by the crystalline processors that had managed the fate of the galaxy for millennia, Elara waited for the Concordat's response. Through the bridge, she felt the shift in collective consciousness, the shock, the anger, the sense of betrayal spreading through billions of minds. More importantly, she felt something else: hope. Not just from humans, but from countless beings across the galaxy who had lived under Concordat control for generations, species who had been told they weren't ready, weren't worthy, weren't capable of determining their own destiny. High Executive Valnasir's voice finally came, stripped of its usual confidence: the Purifiers have been recalled. Project Stardust is terminated. The sovereignty of Earth, and all worlds, shall be acknowledged. It wasn't surrender, not precisely. The Concordat still existed, still held vast power and influence. But for the first time in its long history, it had been forced to recognize its own limitations, to acknowledge that there were things it could not control. As Elara withdrew from the bridge, returning fully to her physical form, she felt both exhaustion and elation. They had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. They had changed the course of galactic history without firing a shot. What now? Marcus asked as they prepared to leave the Nexus, their mission accomplished. Elara looked around at the ancient chamber, at the technology that had controlled the fate of countless species for millennia. Now we rebuild, not just human civilization, but something larger, a true galactic community based not on control, but on cooperation. She paused, thinking of Nova Haven, of Administrator Chen, and the 300,000 souls who had perished there. We remember, she added quietly. We remember what happens when any species, or civilization, believes itself entitled to determine the fate of others. We remember, so we don't become what we fought against. As they left the Nexus, not as infiltrators, but as recognized representatives of a sovereign species, Elara knew the path ahead would not be easy. Old powers don't surrender gracefully. Old prejudices don't disappear overnight. But for the first time in 2 centuries, humanity would face the future on its own terms, not as children to be guided, not as threats to be contained, but as what they had always been beneath concordat oppression, a species of limitless potential, ready to take its rightful place among the stars. And they would not walk that path alone. Already, other species were reaching out, those who had lived under concordat guidance for generations, those who saw in humanity a chance for their own liberation. A new alliance was forming, one based not on fear and control, but on mutual respect and shared aspiration.